Swift Eagle found her among the bodies, the only survivor of the Wagon train massacre that had painted the Texas plains red with blood and black with smoke. The woman lay crumpled beside an overturned water barrel, her dress torn and stained, one pale hand still clutching a simple wooden cross. Her breathing came shallow and quick, like a wounded bird. The Kiowa had been thorough in their work. Scattered belongings told stories of interrupted lives. A child's doll, a man's Bible, cooking pots that would never again hold a family supper. The acrid smell of gunpowder mixed with dust and something else Swift Eagle preferred not to name. He knelt beside the woman, noting the way her fingers had worn calluses in strange places. Not the hands of someone accustomed to hard labor, yet not entirely soft either. Recent calluses, fresh ones. She stirred as he lifted her, muttering words he couldn't catch except for one. California. The word hung in the air like a prayer or a curse. Swift Eagle secured her across his horse's withers and turned away from the carnage. The buzzards could have the rest. The living demanded attention. His camp lay hidden in a canyon where spring water trickled between red rocks and cottonwoods provided shade. The band had grown small over the years. Families scattered like seeds on the wind, some to reservations, others to places even the wind couldn't find. Those who remained trusted Swift Eagle's judgment about bringing strangers into their midst. Most of the time. Singing Crow emerged from her lodge as he approached, her weathered face creasing into lines of disapproval. She spoke in rapid Comanche, her words sharp as flint napping. Swift Eagle answered in the same tongue, his voice carrying the weight of decision already made. The woman needed healing. Questions could wait. They laid her in Singing Crow's lodge, on buffalo robes that smelled of sage and something medicinal. The older woman's hands worked with practiced efficiency, cleaning wounds and checking for injuries that might not show on the surface. Swift Eagle watched from the lodge entrance, noting details that struck him as peculiar. The woman's hair had been carefully braided that morning, despite the journey's hardships. Her dress, though torn and bloodied, showed signs of skilled tailoring. Even unconscious, she held herself with a particular stillness that spoke of training. Discipline. Singing Crow finished her examination and approached him, her expression troubled. She spoke in English this time, her words careful and measured. "This one has secrets." Swift Eagle nodded. Most survivors did. The woman stirred as evening painted the canyon walls orange and purple. Her eyes opened slowly, the color of winter sky, and found his face across the lodge. Fear flickered there, then calculation, then something that might have been relief. "You're safe," he said in English, noting how her posture changed at the sound of his voice. Not the broken English many expected from his people, but the careful pronunciation of someone educated in mission schools. She tried to sit up, winced, and settled back against the robes. When she spoke, her voice carried an accent he couldn't place. Not quite Eastern, not quite foreign. The others, gone. She closed her eyes, and he saw her hands tighten on the wooden cross. Her lips moved silently, and he turned away to give her privacy with whatever god she addressed. Singing Crow returned, with broth and bread, setting them beside the woman with pointed gentleness. The medicine woman's eyes never left their guest's face, cataloging every expression, every gesture. "I'm Eva Worth," the woman said finally. "I was traveling to California. My husband died last winter, and I thought to start over." The words came easily practiced. Swift Eagle recognized the sound of a story told before, perhaps many times. Truth and lies wove together so smoothly that separating them would require patience. "You're seamstress," Singing Crow said, not quite a question. Eva Worth's hands moved instinctively to smooth her torn dress, and Swift Eagle caught the gesture. The way she held her shoulders, the careful modulation of her voice. Everything about her suggested control, even in trauma. "Yes, I hope to find work in the California settlements." Singing Crow exchanged a look with Swift Eagle. The older woman's expression said everything necessary. This stranger would bear watching. You'll need time to heal, Swift Eagle said. Winter comes early in these mountains. Travel will be dangerous. For weeks yet. Ava Worth nodded, relief flickering across her features. But underneath, Swift Eagle sensed something else. Calculation, planning, the look of someone accustomed to thinking several moves ahead. As darkness settled over the canyon, he left her to rest and walked among the lodges of his people. Fewer fires burned now than in his childhood. Fewer voices carried on the evening air. The world was changing. Change brought hard choices. Singing Crow joined him beside the central fire, her presence comfortable in the way of old friendships. She stirred the coals with a stick, sending sparks dancing upward toward stars that had watched over the plains. Long before white men came with their wagons and their wars. She's not what she claims, the medicine woman said quietly. Swift Eagle nodded. Few of us are. This is different. Her hands know fine work, but not the kind she speaks of. Her voice carries education. Her manner suggests station. And her presence here suggests desperation. Singing Crow poked at the fire again, her movements sharp with disapproval. Desperate people make dangerous choices. Swift Eagle considered this. His own choices had been dangerous lately. The meetings with territorial officials, the letters to Washington, the careful negotiations that balanced on knife edges of misunderstanding and mistrust. Sometimes survival required risks that felt like betrayals. We'll watch her, he said finally, but we'll also protect her. She's under our roof now. Singing Crow's grunt suggested this decision would bring complications. Swift Eagle suspected. She was right. But the alternative was to send a wounded woman back into the wilderness, and that choice led to only one destination. The fire crackled lower, and night sounds emerged from the canyon walls. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its pack. Closer, the sound of breathing from the lodges where families slept in whatever safety they could find. Swift Eagle remained by the fire long after Singing Crow retired, watching sparks climb toward stars and wondering what morning would bring. The woman calling herself Ava Worth had secrets. But then so did he. The difference was that his secrets might save his people. Hers might destroy them all. Ava's hands moved wrong when she held the water gourd. Too precise, too careful, like someone accustomed to crystal rather than clay. Swift Eagle watched her from across the fire as morning light filtered through the canyon. 3 days had passed since the rescue, and her body was healing. But the careful way she arranged her torn skirt, the unconscious straightening of her spine when others approached, the delicate manner she broke her bread, these things spoke louder than her words. About seamstressing and frontier hardship. She caught him studying her and offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I should help with something. I'm not accustomed to idleness. The words rang true, but not in the way she intended. Swift Eagle had seen enough idle rich folk during his time in the territorial capital to recognize someone fighting against their own nature. Singing Crow emerged from treating a child's fever, her hands stained with medicinal herbs. She nodded toward Ava with practiced neutrality. Can you clean wounds? Ava's response came too quickly. Yes, I've sewn enough torn fabric to understand mending. But when they brought her to the injured warrior, her movements betrayed knowledge beyond needlework. She cleaned the infected gash with efficiency that spoke of training. Real training. Her fingers found pressure points to minimize pain, applied herbs with understanding rather than mimicry. The warrior's fever broke by evening. Singing Crow pulled Swift Eagle aside as stars emerged overhead. The older woman's face carried the weight of suspicion ripening into certainty. She knows healing, not frontier healing. Proper healing. Swift Eagle nodded. He'd noticed Ava's reaction to seeing the medical supplies. The way her eyes had cataloged contents with familiarity. The absence of surprise at remedies that would have puzzled most pioneer women. Someone taught her well. Someone with education, station, money. They stood in silence, watching Eva help tend the cooking fires. Even in torn clothing, even with dust in her hair, she moved with unconscious grace. The kind of bearing that came from years of instruction. Why would such a woman travel alone? Singing Crow asked, "Same reason any of us choose hard paths." The alternative was worse. 3 more days passed. Eva worked alongside the women, her hands learning calluses in new places while old ones faded. She helped with cooking, though. Her spice choices suggested familiarity with ingredients beyond frontier staples. She mended clothing with stitches too fine for simple seamstress work. And she watched Swift Eagle with eyes that held questions she never voiced. He'd been careful about revealing his own education. Let her assume what most whites assumed about Comanche capabilities. But increasingly, he found himself wanting to speak of things beyond hunting and weather. Books he'd read. Cities he'd seen. The weight of trying to build bridges between worlds that seemed determined to burn each other down. The territorial meetings grew more frequent. Swift Eagle rode out twice that week to speak with officials about winter supply agreements. Treaties that might keep his people fed when the snows came. Negotiations that required him to become someone else entirely. Each time he returned, Ava's eyes followed his movements with increasing attention. On the second return, she was waiting. By his horse. "You speak with the authorities." Not a question. Swift Eagle studied her face, noting the careful neutrality that matched his own. Sometimes talking prevents fighting. And sometimes it simply delays the inevitable. The words carried bitter knowledge. Swift Eagle found himself truly looking at her for the first time. Not the rescued woman. Not the mysterious stranger. But someone who understood the cost of impossible positions. "You've dealt with authorities before." Ava's smile held winter. "I've learned that powerful men rarely keep promises to those they consider beneath them." She turned away before he could respond, but the words lingered. Spoken with the voice of experience rather than opinion. That evening, Swift Eagle found himself walking to where Eva sat apart from the others, working on mending by firelight. The needle moved through fabric with mathematical precision. Each stitch exactly placed. "May I?" She gestured to the ground beside her. He settled onto the earth, noting how she kept careful space between them, proper distance. "The work you did today," he said quietly. "Treating wounds. That's not seamstress knowledge." Ava's hand stilled on the fabric. For a moment, something raw flickered across her features. "My mother was ill for years before she died. I learned what I could to help her." Truth and lies again, woven together like her stitches. Swift Eagle recognized the pattern. Education is valuable, regardless of how it comes. She looked at him then, really looked. Her eyes held surprise at finding understanding rather than suspicion. "You speak well for someone raised away from schools, mission education, reading, writing. Enough white man's learning to negotiate between worlds." The admission hung between them. Two people acknowledging masks they wore for survival. "It must be difficult," Eva said softly, "being neither fully one thing nor another." Swift Eagle felt something shift in his chest. Recognition, the lonely burden of living between identities. "Some days I forget which language to think in." Ava's laugh held no humor. "Some days I forget which person to be." They sat in silence as the fire crackled lower. Around them, the camp settled into evening quiet. Children's voices from the lodges, adult conversation growing soft with tiredness. "The supplies your people need," Ava said suddenly, "for winter. How much would be enough?" Swift Eagle studied her profile in the firelight. The question carried weight beyond casual concern. "More than we can afford. The territorial agreements provide some grain, But not enough. Medicine costs more than we can trade. Ava's fingers moved to touch something at her throat. Hidden beneath her torn dress, Swift Eagle glimpsed the edge of what might have been jewelry. If someone had means, she said carefully, someone wanting to help, what would make the greatest difference? The question opened dangerous territory. Swift Eagle felt the ground shifting beneath their conversation, enough to relocate, if necessary, purchase of safe land, supplies to last until spring planting. Ava nodded, her expression thoughtful. Then her hand fell away from her throat, and the careful mask returned. I hope someone with such means finds your people worthy of assistance. But Swift Eagle had seen the chain, had noticed the weight of whatever hung from it, had registered the unconscious gesture of someone accustomed to valuable possessions. As Eva returned to her mending, he found himself calculating the cost of her dress before it was torn, the quality of fabric beneath the damage, the education evident in her speech, the healing knowledge that spoke of private instruction. Most importantly, the way she asked about money as if she understood exactly what it could buy. That night, he lay awake listening to wind through the canyon walls. Somewhere in the darkness, coyotes called to their pack. Closer, the sound of restless movement from the lodge where Eva slept. Two people with secrets. Two people carrying weights that bent their shoulders and measured their words. The difference was becoming clear to Swift Eagle. His secrets were about survival. Hers were about something far more dangerous. The jewelry was worth more than Swift Eagle had ever seen in one place. The trader in Fort Griffin held Ava's necklace up to lamplight, his weathered fingers trembling slightly as he examined each stone. Where did you say you found this? Swift Eagle kept his voice level. Among the wagon train wreckage. Thought it might help buy winter supplies. The trader's eyes narrowed. He'd been dealing with frontier folk long enough to smell lies. But gold was gold, and stones this fine didn't care about their provenance. This here's worth enough to buy your whole tribe new horses, maybe new land too. The words hit Swift Eagle like cold water. Ava had claimed the necklace was a simple inheritance, a seamstress's modest keepsake from the wagon wreckage. No seamstress had ever owned jewels worth more than most men saw in a lifetime. The ride back to camp stretched long and silent. Desert wind carried dust that settled in Swift Eagle's throat, but not as heavy as the weight of Ava's deception. He'd trusted her careful words, her story of modest widowhood, her claims of simple frontier ambitions. Each mile revealed new layers of the lie. Ava was waiting when he returned, her face bright with expectation. She'd helped prepare a feast with the supplies he'd purchased. Children ran between the lodges, their bellies full for the first time in weeks. The elderly sat straighter, strengthened by proper medicine, all bought with treasure that no honest seamstress would possess. You've made them so happy, Ava said, approaching his horse. The children especially, they needed this. Swift Eagle dismounted without meeting her eyes. The weight of the trader's words pressed against his chest. He pulled the remaining coins from his saddlebag, their weight insignificant compared to what he'd learned. We need to talk. Something in his tone made Eva step back. Her smile faded, replaced by the careful neutrality he'd learned to recognize as her defensive mask. They walked beyond the camp's edge, where red rocks cast shadows in the failing light. Swift Eagle felt the distance between them like a physical thing. Trust, once broken, left jagged edges that cut both ways. The necklace, he said finally. It wasn't from the wagon wreckage. Ava's hand moved instinctively to her throat, then stopped. The gesture spoke louder than words. I never said it was mine originally. You said it was an inheritance. Something modest, something a seamstress might own. Ava's eyes held his for a moment, then looked away toward the horizon. Her shoulders carried the weight of someone accustomed to bearing judgment. It was an inheritance. Just not the kind you imagined. What kind was it? The question hung. between them like smoke from a dying fire. Ava's fingers twisted in her torn skirt, and Swift Eagle saw the battle playing out across her features. Truth warring with whatever fear kept her secrets locked away. The kind that comes with obligations, with dangers, with people who would kill to reclaim it. Her voice carried exhaustion deeper than physical weariness. The bone-deep tiredness of someone who'd been running too long. Who are you? Someone who made mistakes. Someone whose presence here puts everyone at risk. Swift Eagle felt anger building in his chest. Not at her wealth, not even at her lies, but at the careful way she rationed truth, giving out pieces small enough to satisfy without revealing anything that mattered. That's not an answer. Ava turned to face him fully. In the dying light, her features looked carved from stone, beautiful and distant and utterly unreachable. My name is Evangeline Ashworth. I'm the daughter of a British lord. The jewelry you sold today was worth enough to buy safety for your entire people. The words fell between them like stones into still water. Ripples of understanding spread outward, carrying implications that changed everything Swift Eagle thought he knew. Your nobility. I was nobility. Now I'm someone who watches good people suffer while I hide behind lies. Swift Eagle stared at her, the careful grammar, the unconscious grace, the healing knowledge that spoke of private tutors and gentlemen's education. All the pieces that had never quite fit Eva Worth suddenly made perfect sense for Baroness Evangeline. Ashworth, why are you here? Because the alternative was worse. What alternative? Ava's laugh held no warmth. Marriage to a man who would have used my family's influence to justify horrors. A life spent watching evil done in my name. So I ran. She gestured toward the camp, where firelight flickered between the lodges, where families gathered around suppers, purchased with her hidden wealth. I thought I could disappear. Become someone. Simple, someone clean. But you can't. No, every day I stay here, I put everyone at risk. Every day I don't use what I have to help. I watch people suffer needlessly. Swift Eagle felt the ground shifting beneath their conversation. The woman he'd been drawn to, Eva Worth the seamstress, had never existed. In her place stood someone whose very presence carried dangers he couldn't calculate. Others are looking for you. Yes. Dangerous others. Yes. The simplicity of her answers made them more terrible. No explanations, no justifications. Just acknowledgement of threats that followed her trail like wolves. You should have told me. And what would you have done? Sent me away to die in the desert? Used me as a bargaining chip with the territorial authorities? Swift Eagle opened his mouth to deny it, then paused. He didn't know what he would have done. Knowing that Eva had enough wealth to save his people changed everything. I would have protected you. The way you're protecting me now? Her voice held a bitter understanding. She saw the calculation in his eyes, the weighing of her worth against the needs of his people. The harsh equation of survival, where lives were measured against resources. It's different now. Because now you know what I'm worth. The accusation struck deep. Shame burned in Swift Eagle's chest, but beneath it lay harder truths. His people were starving. Winter was near. The territorial agreements offered too little, too late. And standing before him was someone whose jewelry could buy safety for those he loved. Your wealth could save lives, and my presence could cost them. Silence settled as darkness wrapped around the canyon. One truth didn't erase the other. Both demanded to be seen. Who's hunting you? People with power, people with connections, people who believe I belong to them. How close are they? Ava's silence lasted long enough to become her answer. Close. Enough for all of us to be in danger. Swift Eagle felt his world tightening. Every decision had consequences that would ripple through the lives he swore to protect. What do you want from me? Nothing. That's the problem. Ava turned away, her figure melting into the shadows. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of someone who had already chosen the impossible. I'll be gone by morning. Take what jewelry I left. Use it to move your people somewhere safe. And go where? Somewhere my problems can't follow anyone else. Swift Eagle watched her walk back to camp, her outline shifting between firelight and shadow. Behind her, the quiet sounds of his people, settling in for the night. Children's laughter, soft conversations, all of it made possible by wealth that came from a woman whose true name he had just learned. All of it balanced on the edge of threats he couldn't yet see. The wind rose, carrying dust and the scent of an oncoming storm. Swift Eagle stood alone, measuring the cost of truth, and realizing the math of survival was more complicated than he had ever imagined. Eva was gone when morning came, but not far. Swift Eagle followed her trail toward the northern pass, where rocks offered cover and a stream flowed year-round. She'd taken only what she could carry, leaving behind anything that would slow her down or offer comfort. But the tracks told another story. 3 riders, horses with shoes, military precision in their spacing. They'd been watching the canyon, waiting for this moment. Swift Eagle saddled his fastest horse and rode hard for the pass. The rising sun burned away the mist, revealing land that showed no mercy for mistakes. His horse's hooves pounded against stone and sand, in rhythm with his heartbeat. He found them at the water crossing. Ava stood between 3 mounted men. Her hands were raised, her spine straight. Even surrounded, even facing capture, she held herself with grace that revealed her upbringing and training. The wooden cross still hung at her neck, but now it looked more like armor than faith. Lead rider wore a uniform, dusty, but sharp, military. The other 2 wore plain clothes that couldn't hide their profession. Bounty hunters. Men who tracked others for money and didn't ask questions about justice. Swift Eagle approached slowly, his rifle visible but lowered. A deliberate move, showing strength, not aggression. Gentlemen, you're on Comanche land. The thongs. Military man turned. His face was weathered, confident, the kind of man used to having his authority accepted without question. Colonel Bradshaw, Territorial Forces. We're here on official business. Swift Eagle looked at Ava. She stood still, but tension rippled through her. She was ready to run or fight, though both options were hopeless. What business? Recovering a kidnapped woman. This lady was taken from a wagon train massacre. We're here to escort her back to civilization. The lie came easily, wrapped in formal words that made it sound like a mission, not manipulation. Swift Eagle recognized the tactic. He'd heard it before, officials twisting truth to fit their goals. She can speak for herself. Bradshaw's smile was cold. She's been through a lot, not thinking clearly. That's why we're here. Swift Eagle turned to Eva again. Her eyes met his. What he saw there made his chest tighten. Not fear of capture, fear of consequences that would follow. Perhaps we should ask the territorial governor about this official business. The words hung in the air between them. Swift Eagle watched recognition flicker across Bradshaw's features. The colonel hadn't expected to deal with someone who understood bureaucracy and channels of authority. Governor's a busy man. Delegated this matter to military discretion. Convenient. One of the bounty hunters shifted in his saddle, his hand moving closer to his weapon. Swift Eagle noted the movement without changing his own posture. We can resolve this peacefully, Bradshaw said. You return to your people. We complete our mission. Everyone benefits. Except the lady. Lady gets returned to her proper place, where she belongs. Ava spoke for the first time since Swift Eagle's arrival. Her voice carried across the water with crystalline clarity. I am Baroness Evangeline Ashworth. I renounce any claim these men have to my person or property. I request territorial protection. Under provisions of the Homestead Act. The words struck the group like physical blows. Bradshaw's face went white, then red. The bounty hunters exchanged glances that spoke of complications they hadn't been paid to handle. "Ma'am," Bradshaw said carefully, "you're clearly not thinking straight. Trauma affects judgment. Best to come along quietly." "I'm thinking perfectly. Clearly, I know exactly who sent you and what they intend." Swift Eagle felt the situation shifting. Ava's revelation had changed the game in ways he was still calculating. "The territorial governor will want to hear about British nobility on American soil," he said quietly. "Especially nobility claiming protection under federal law." Bradshaw's hand moved toward his sidearm. The bounty hunters followed suit. Swift Eagle remained motionless, but his stillness carried its own threat. "Governor Hensley is in Santa Fe," Ava said. "He corresponds regularly with my family regarding territorial investments. He'll confirm my identity and my right to federal protection." The name hit Bradshaw like a physical blow. Governor Hensley's reputation for protecting territorial economic interests was well known. Cross the wrong investor and find yourself explaining to Washington why development money was disappearing. "This is getting complicated," one of the bounty hunters muttered. Swift Eagle seized the moment. "Santa Fe's 2 days' ride. Governor can sort this out properly. Legal-like, or we can settle it here," Bradshaw said, quietly. The threat hung explicit in the air. Swift Eagle recognized the moment when talk gave way to action, when careful diplomacy broke down and older solutions emerged. 3 against 2, the second bounty hunter observed. Simple mathematics. Eva moved then, stepping closer to Swift. "Eagle, not for protection, but for unity. 2 people choosing to stand together against impossible odds." "Actually," she said quietly, "it's more complicated than that." Her hand moved to her throat, where a silver whistle hung beside the wooden cross. The sound that emerged was sharp and clear, carrying across the canyon walls. From the rocks above came answering calls. Singing Crow emerged first, her rifle held with comfortable familiarity. Then others, warriors who'd been watching the northern approaches. Women who'd seen strangers riding toward their territory. Swift Eagle's people surrounded the water crossing like smoke made solid. Bradshaw's face went pale as he calculated new odds. 3 against 2 had become 3 against 15. Mathematics that suggested different solutions. "Federal marshals will hear about this," he said, but the words carried no conviction. "They'll hear about attempted kidnapping of British nobility," Eva replied. "They'll hear about bounty hunters operating without proper warrants. They'll hear about military officers exceeding their authority." The standoff stretched taut as bowstring. Then Bradshaw made his choice. "This isn't over." "No," Swift Eagle agreed. "But it's over for today." The 3 men rode away slowly, their retreat dignified but absolute. Swift Eagle watched until they disappeared beyond the canyon mouth, then turned to Eva. She stood knee-deep in stream water, her torn dress clinging to her legs, her face turned toward the sky. When she looked at him, her eyes held something he'd never seen there before. "Hope, the governor will confirm your identity?" "Governor Hensley has been trying to secure British investment in territorial development for 2 years. My family's businesses represent exactly the kind of partnership he wants." Swift Eagle felt pieces clicking into place. "Your presence here isn't just about running away. No, it's about running toward something. Using what I have to build something better." They walked back toward camp together, water dripping from their boots, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. Around them, the canyon walls rose like protective arms, sheltering space where different worlds might learn to coexist. "What happens now?" Swift Eagle asked. Ava's smile held sunrise. "Now we build something new. Something that honors both our worlds." 1 year later, Swift Eagle stood beside the trading post they built together. The structure rose from valley floor like hope made manifest. Comanche families traded alongside territorial settlers. Children learned reading and traditional medicine with equal enthusiasm. Eva emerged from the schoolhouse, her hair braided. With traditional beads, her dress a careful blend of practical frontier wear and feminine grace. She'd kept her promise to use wealth for building rather than hiding. Singing Crow approached from the medical lodge, her expression carrying the satisfaction of someone whose suspicions had been transformed into respect. "The British woman has learned well," she said in Comanche. Swift Eagle nodded. "The British woman has taught us well too." They watched Eva help children with their lessons, her voice carrying clearly across the valley. She'd found her place between worlds, just as he had found his. The sunset painted the canyon walls gold and crimson, and Swift Eagle thought about the distance they'd traveled from that first moment beside the wagon train wreckage. Some journeys led to destinations that couldn't be imagined when they began. Some destinations were worth every mile of difficult ground. Eva looked up from her teaching and smiled. The expression held everything that mattered: trust earned through honesty, love built on mutual respect, hope growing from shared purpose. Swift Eagle smiled back and felt the future stretching before them, bright with possibility. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you, it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.